Let's talk about the death penalty in North Carolina. The death penalty has been back in the news recently. Just the other week, our state legislature passed a new bill that orders the state prison system to investigate new methods of execution, including bringing back the electric chair or even firing squads. But to understand where all this is coming from, you need a little bit of background. A lot of people think of the death penalty purely in moral terms, like is it right or wrong for the government to execute one of its citizens for crimes? And there is a partisan divide on this issue, but it's actually not that big. A majority of Republican voters do support the death penalty, but a sizable minority still oppose it, and the opposite is true for Democrats. There's just a lot more gray area here than a lot of people think. But moral judgments are not really moved by new information, so let's set all of that aside for a minute and just talk about the logistics of the death penalty. There are a couple of things we know for certain about administering the death penalty in the United States, and one of them is that it is much, much more expensive for taxpayers to execute a prisoner than to imprison them for life, and this is true pretty much everywhere in the United States, including North Carolina. This one can be really tough for some people to wrap their heads around, but it is unquestionably true. For death row inmates, there are more complex legal processes, there are more appeals and trial costs, and then there are operational costs for death row facilities themselves, and all that winds up costing taxpayers about $2 million extra per death row inmate. Another thing we know for certain is that our criminal justice system is not perfect, and innocent people, overwhelmingly black and brown people, do get convicted of crimes that they did not commit. Here in North Carolina, we have this thing called the Innocence Inquiry Commission, which reviews hard new evidence like genetic proof in felony cases. In the last 20 years, that commission has completely exonerated 16 people who were wrongly convicted of crimes they did not commit, including 2 who were on death row. In total, 12 people have been completely exonerated with new evidence from North Carolina's death row in the last 25 years. Side note here, some of our state lawmakers in the legislature are actively trying to defund the Innocence Inquiry Commission right now, and they won't say why. The biggest reason people get exonerated is because racial bias runs extremely deep in North Carolina's criminal justice system. Just to take an example, black people are 500% more likely than white people to be sentenced to death for exactly the same crime. Offenders are also twice as likely to get a death sentence if the victim of a crime is white. Exonerations are good news, but they're also proof that North Carolina's criminal justice system does make mistakes, and there are almost certainly some innocent people on North Carolina's death row today. There's also no evidence that the death penalty has any deterrent effect on crime. In fact, homicide rates are actually higher in death penalty states. Moral arguments are very important, and people feel a range of ways about the death penalty, but on a purely logistical basis, the death penalty is a deeply flawed system. It's expensive and burdensome to taxpayers, it carries out very unequal justice, and it doesn't make us any safer in the end.